Hello and welcome into the podcast. Today is very special. I have on Aaron Barber, and we talk about how to pronounce the word niche. Is it niche or niche? So you're not going to want to miss that. Just kidding. We talk about a bunch of stuff like hallucinating in the Philippines, setting course records, running 110 degree loops in the desert, and an obscure race with a Barkley-esque name and weird rules and stuff too that he just won in also 110 degree heat. If you can't tell, Aaron Barber is a big fan of hot. So hot right now. He just loves the heat. So we get into that, we get into race directing, and then the main reason why I wanted to have him on is whether you think these episodes are funny or stupid, well, thanks for being here either way. But also, I think it is pretty important to recognize that, I'm just passing along some golden knowledge, some good ideas. Do you want to get into the outdoors? Do you want to learn things? Do you want to set FKTs? Do you want to be a race director? Do you want to write a book, make a movie? I mean, I am giving away all the secrets. But Aaron, I wanted to have him on because he has a really good illustration and thoughts and talks on how to combine your passion and hobby, how to get into the industry, and just his story on becoming a trail runner and a race director all within the last 3 years or so is a really good place to start if you're not sure where you want to go, you're not sure how to grasp onto something and give it a try. Aaron jumped in the deep end and has done short and fast and steep and slow and super long stuff too, and overseas stuff, and is just always taking on the next hardest thing, and it's kind of all over the place. So I thought it would be pretty fun to share that, and at the end we get into kind of some tips, tricks, how people can get into the industry, and how his story is something that can be pretty attainable by anyone else, of just hanging around the community, volunteering, getting to know people, and then eventually turning that into a job. So that is the takeaway from this one. If you go back through the episodes, I'm just dropping knowledge bombs left and right. There are tips on everything. I mean, even Jamison Collins, that episode, we talked about how the Oregon Coast Trail was like, I don't even know if I can get it, but the importance of showing up, and then he ended up getting the FKT. Nick Fowler had to spend a couple days in a literal cave, and so just that combination of patience, planning, perspective, there's some knowledge there. Lil Buddha taught you how to avoid a grizzly. Don Reichel taught you how to set a Guinness Book of World Record. Is that what you call it? A Guinness Book of World Records. Record. Okay. He taught you how to set a world record on a manual treadmill. Liz talked about hallucinating and how to go from no backpacking experience into setting an FKT on your first real multi-week backpacking trip. So all kinds of knowledge all over this podcast. We make jokes, but I'm also just giving you a perfect life plan here too. These are all satirical, but also there's good info here too. All right, thanks for joining. Let's get into Aaron Barber. Let's go. And one last thing, this episode, there was a little bit of internet issues in the middle of it. Luckily, I usually have a backup on the cloud, whatever the cloud means, so had to use that. So there's a couple weird little echoes or things in the background, but otherwise it's a nearly perfect episode, especially when compared to the perfection that you guys are used to. Enjoy. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Aaron Barber. I think I want to start with maybe the second dumbest race you've ever done. So what is it called? Circle of Hell? Is that the name of the race? And what is that about?
Yeah, so Circle of Hell is a race that my running group puts on every year. And it's in Phoenix in July. It's a 3-hour timed event, and it's a 1 mile loop with some hills and stuff. And the 3 hour takes place from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. So like the heat of the day. So it's usually but
And
110 plus
it's the hottest
degrees.
day of the year usually.
Right around like that weekend, early July, mid-July. And it's
Okay.
there's a good turnout. There's like
How do
it's like
you,
100 people.
and you've won this race, right?
Yeah, I've done pretty well in the past. I won last year. This year I did not win. Back and had a bad day. But I've been on the podium, and then I won in 2023. But yeah, it's like 21 laps in 3 hours I did. But yeah, you set up a little aid station.
Wow.
I have a kiddie pool that I put out by my van, and lay in that every lap or every other lap just to get really wet and just try to ignore the heat.
Okay. So for 3 hours, you're running mile loops at about 8-minute miles or so, and you're just trying to get as many as you can, and it's 110 degrees.
Yeah, in essence. And then there's a couple of hills on the course. And then yeah, that's just the cooling strategy is the most fun thing. Aside from like the social atmosphere, there's like a crew area where you get everyone, like there's hundreds of people that run the event. So there's 10 by 10 tents and pools, and people have squirt guns and stuff. So there's like a good 200-meter stretch where you're just running through the crew area, and it gets the juices flowing.
So with 100 people, do people start dropping out or just like dropping off the pace pretty quickly? Is it just like you and a few people by the end of the 3 hours?
Well, like a lot of people just they won't run the whole thing, so they'll like run a lap and then they'll sit in the shade, and then they'll run a lap and then maybe take a 20 or 30-minute break, and it's a really social event. So there's probably I don't know, a dozen or 2 dozen people that are actually trying to race it and get as many laps as possible. The rest are just kind of out there having a good time and trying not to die.
Totally. Okay. So now we've set the stage for you, apparently like triple-digit heat and difficult races. So let's go into I think it's called the Phoenician, right? 50K?
Yeah. Phoenician 50K was this past weekend. Yeah, that's another...
Is this James Bonet's race?
Yeah, this is James's birthday race. He started it, I think, 9 or 10 years ago. I've done it for the last couple of years. I've never finished before this year, and then I had a good day, so I tied for the win this year.
Wow. So do you like cross the finish line holding hands to take that tie for the win?
I brought that up to Ian if we should hold hands. We just run side by side, but we just side by sided it and high fived at the finish. But that was a brutal race too. That's another fat ass event in August in Phoenix with 11,500 feet of vert in a 50K, and just a lot of short, steep climbs, a lot of off-trail stuff.
Okay, so let's go back to like how it works, because you don't know the route until the morning of the event, right? How does the whole thing go?
It's a little Barkley-esque where you to get in you have to reach out to James and ask, and then he'll send you a check-in time on race morning, and then my check-in time was 4:55 a.m. So I go to the back of his car and he sends me the route, and it's any questions? Nope. We started at Cholla Trailhead at Camelback Mountain. I'll kind of leave the rest of the route secret because it is a secret kind of thing. But it hits most of the major peaks in the Phoenix area, and we're just doing you're just basically just following your track, and you'll kind of be in a neighborhood and then go through the end of a cul-de-sac, and then you just like look up and there's a mountain with no trail, and that's where your line goes. So you just aimlessly follow this line for 11 hours until you get we finish at a brewery.
Yeah. So does he send you a GPX track? Is that how you know what the route is? Or
that's it. And then everyone just forwards that to like their...
And then how about throwing water?
Yeah, he puts a couple water spots out, and then there's a few like visitor centers or trailheads that have water access. But the crew aspect's huge. Last year I DNF'd after 19 miles and didn't have a crew. This year my wife crewed me, and it was a game changer. It was great. So I forwarded her the route, and so she could go to. It kind of goes from like mountain, and then you're in like a neighborhood for a little bit, and then another mountain, then neighborhood. So she could go into these neighborhoods and just park our truck, and she'd have we have like an awning for our truck, so there'd be shade and a chair, and I would just sit in the chair. She'd refill my vest, and I'd just get iced down and then go to the next. The segments were only like 3 to 5 miles, but sometimes that would take 3 hours to get through a section because you're just up on like a knife edge ridge line and doing some scrambling. And yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah, I mean, the Circle of Hell, all these things sound like they're pushing your body in like way more unique ways than most races. Like races are like, oh, you gain this much or you have to go this far. You're like, okay, that, but also I want it to be 115 degrees out here.
Yeah, it was really, really odd to win a 50K in 11 and a half hours.
So less than 3 miles an hour average moving.
Yeah, it was like my elapsed pace was like 22 minutes per mile.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. How many people finish it every year?
This year had a lot of finishers, and there was 9 of us that finished. So there was 48 starters, 9 people finished. Only one woman, shout out to Megan Slavin. I think that's her fifth win in a row at Phoenician. So she's pretty unstoppable there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if she just gets to the finish line, it sounds like she can win most years.
Yeah, no. But of course,
typical year for finishers.
5 probably, maybe less than that. So I'm sure next year the route, like James, even when I got the route, I kind of looked at some of the sections that we were going through and some of the mountains that we were climbing, and I told him, I was like, hey, you went easy on this year, and he agreed. So I think with 9 finishers, we'll probably get a harder route next year, try to thin the crowd.
Cool. Yeah. It's like the similar thing of Barkley where he wants it to be the right amount of finishers, it sounds like.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, let's now travel overseas. And you raced in the Philippines, was it this year?
I did. Yeah, that was this was a year of really tough races. It was the Philippines. It was hardcore 100. That was 100-mile with 33,000 feet of vert. And kind of same thing. There was a lot of like backcountry stuff and off-trail stuff and very, very steep climbs. And then just every different ecosystem would be in the rainforest. Then you get up high elevation, pine forests and grasslands. It was wild, but that was another one where I got 9th overall, and that was 41 hours for a 100-mile.
These races are just insane. Like that's the time that basically the winner of like Bigfoot was in this year for a 200, and that's like 100-miler.
Yeah. Yep.
Did you sleep during it?
I didn't plan on it, but that was kind of crazy too because I was so jet lagged because we took a vacation to go over to the Philippines, and I didn't want to like ruin half the vacation with like pre-race stuff because I felt if I got there like 5 days early, I'm just going to be wanting to like lay in bed and not do anything fun. So I basically flew like from Phoenix to LA to Taiwan to the Philippines, rented a car, and I showed up like at our Airbnb like 10 hours before the race started. So it was just like a quick sleep and then start racing. And I kind of figured that I would be tired at some point, so I didn't really care if it was during the day or at night, but it was pretty awful. I was getting like really sleepy at like 2 p.m. It was like, so it's only like 8 hours into the race, and I was kind of like already in the falling asleep while walking. So it was like 4 p.m. and I got to an aid station, and they're like, "You look terrible." And I was like, "I know." So they let me sleep I asked to sleep for 10 minutes, and they're like, "No, you need 30 minutes." I was like, "No, I just let me sleep for 10 minutes. I'll be good." And then they let me sleep for 30 minutes because I couldn't set my alarm on my phone because it's so humid over there. So I couldn't use my touch screen at all. So I was like trying to set an alarm, and they're like, "Oh, don't worry about it. We'll wake you up. We'll wake you up." And then they just they let me sleep for 30 minutes, which was great. And then I did do one more trail nap at like mile 90 for like my wife was pacing me, and I was just a zombie, just hallucinating bad. And I was just like, just out of the blue, I'm just like set an alarm for 5 minutes and just kind of, you know how it goes, fall over and blink and continue on.
So what were the hallucinations like? Everyone loves hallucination stories.
Oh, yeah. And this is crazy because I don't hallucinate a lot in other races, but this one was wild. I was like, I don't know if you know Star Wars, but General Grievous, I saw him like all the time, just in the shadows and stuff. So he was prevalent. And then there was like like the banners you'd hang in like a fraternity or something. Like they were hanging from trees everywhere, and it was just like say like different colleges. Like I was just seeing banners hanging from trees. And it was really really odd. And then another weird thing was like right at the end there was we were like 3 miles to go, and we were on a road, and it was like raining and stuff. And then I saw a centipede that was like a foot long, and it was black, and it had like blue antenna and orange legs, but it was real. Like I had to ask my wife if it was real, and it was an actual thing. That was just like the crazy animal that we saw in the Philippines, but I totally thought I was hallucinating. And she's like, "Oh, that's a real centipede." So I was like, "Oh, wow."
Yeah, that's my main question is like, what isn't the wildlife like dangerous? There's like poisonous snakes and stuff over there. Was that ever a concern, or just didn't want about it?
I'm not like, I love seeing snakes and all sorts of different wildlife, so I was excited to see stuff. We saw a big cobra like on the drive to the race, and then during the race I didn't see any snakes, which was nice. The biggest issue was like the domesticated animals. There was like a lot of dogs, like stray dogs and stuff, and 99% of them were fine. Like they would just ignore you and do nothing. But there'd be like occasionally it's like 2 a.m. and you go through like a little town for like a quarter mile, and then like 4 dogs would just come and try to like just nip at your legs and just be barking at you the whole time. So I was just like, I'm walking backwards and I'm using my poles to like keep the dogs away, and it's the exact opposite. Like you get one stretch of pavement in the whole race and just like nice efficient miles, but I have to walk backwards and fend off dogs. And I had a little standoff with a cow on like, there was like this kind of knife edge ridge line. You have to like climb to peak, and you get out of the rainforest. It's like this big grassy area, and it was like a really young bull, and you just like wouldn't get out of the way, and there's not much room to maneuver around. And I was like talking to him and stuff. It's just like, dude, I don't want any trouble. Just let me get around. So that was like a 10-minute delay just trying to get past the cow. But no, there was other cool, like I made some friends with cows. I was like petting some and water buffalo. And it was cool to see everything over there.
Yeah, totally. Okay. So you do this 40-hour race, and then are you expected to do normal vacation things the rest of the time you're in the Philippines?
Yeah. That's we did vacation after that. That was good though, because like we're usually like a really active couple, like my wife and I. And so I did the 100, and she paced me for the last 22 miles of it. And then it was really nice just to take a week and not have that pressure. We just went down to Palawan, so like a tropical island, and stayed at a resort. And we still did some scuba diving and beach life, but it was nice to not have to like have the pressure of, oh, let's go adventure. Like we had the adventure stuff already done. So it was a relaxing section.
Yeah. And how was it with international racing and stuff too? Were the aid stations completely different than you would have expected? Did you have to bring your own stuff? How was kind of the different culture of racing over there?
Yeah, 100% different. That might have been like the biggest challenge of the race, like aside from like the route and stuff like that, but is dealing with the aid stations and not like for example, every aid station had like chicken soup, but in terms of like fluids, there was like they might have like 20 ounces of Gatorade, and that'd like they'd be the only electrolytes they had today. So it'd just be water and Coca-Cola, and then chicken soup, and then a giant pot of hard-boiled eggs, like with the shells on them. And they would just tell you to like, here, take some eggs, like on your travels. And then there was a few times where like I really wanted electrolytes and they were out, so they're just like, I was like, do you have any lemonade or fruit juice or anything like that? And they'd just be like, no, we have Sprite. I was like, well, that's not gonna get the job done. So, but you just make it work. And even like the chicken adobo soup they had, it's not deboned. It's just like chopped up chicken. So it's like served in this bowl, like scalding hot, and you're hungry. So I'm just like, oh, let me, like this big bite of chicken sounds good. And it's just like crunchy and gristly and bony. So then you're trying to like hold it in your hands and you're burning your fingers. And it's just, there's a lot of like, just every step of the way is a challenge. But I think that's what made it really cool.
Yeah. Are you just like throwing hard-boiled eggs in your vest and just like eating them along the way?
I tried to do hard-boiled eggs and they did not sit well. Like they were way hard-boiled. Like it was like a rock. So it was really funny though. Like sometimes I just had to take the situation I was in and just kind of like zoom out. And it's just like, it's a small race and everyone's really spread out. So it's like me at an aid station with 3 local volunteers. And I'm just like sitting at a table, like trying to peel a hard-boiled egg. And it's just like more of a, like the shell is sticking to it. And then it was just really comical. Like middle of the night, I'm just out in the middle of the Philippines, like quote unquote racing a 100. But the challenge right now is peeling an egg. So it's just then go climb a mountain.
Yeah. That's so unique. Was the winner a local? Was it just like the being on your own terrain is such an advantage type of thing?
Yeah, there was 2. So this race actually kind of made some headlines because the winner, he was actually from a little bit north of there. I ran with him for a bit. He was super nice, but he took his shirt off, and I guess it's like a federal crime in the Philippines to expose your body. So he won the race. And he got disqualified because he ran the last half of it shirtless.
Whoa.
So
that's insane. Wow.
Yeah. But it was, the dichotomy of it was really cool too. Just like, I was like, I don't know, I think I'm a pretty good climber and hiker. And I'm over here with, an expensive vest and carbon poles and shoes and everything like that. And all this good equipment. And these people in the Philippines they're kicking my butt, and they're just picking up sticks on the side of the trail or not using poles at all and just wearing like basketball shorts and no shirt. And it's just, it was really cool. It was really cool to be humbled like that.
Wow, that's cool. So any other plans to race internationally after that unique experience?
Yeah, I probably will go back to the Philippines to that race next year and possibly the year after that. It just works out really well with my race directing schedule. And it's also a double qualifier for Western States and Hard Rock. So it's really nice to it's also in May. So training and living in Phoenix, it's way better to train in the winter than train for like a fall race all summer. So between like the training, fitting the work schedule, and then being able to knock out 2 qualifiers at one race, it works out really well. My wife and I like to travel. So being in the Philippines, we can do the race, and maybe we don't need to stay in the Philippines, but we have a good launching point for like a vacation after the race to Australia or somewhere else in Southeast Asia.
Totally. Cool. Man, so we've covered like the 3 of your crazy races, but how did you get into trail running? I mean, it sounds like the triathlon background and then somehow got into trail running enough that you direct some pretty big races too.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. I was always, I ran all like growing up. My dad's been a triathlete and a runner. So it's been like I was doing 5Ks when I was, just whatever, 6, 7 years old. But I was always like a road runner and triathlete and a road cyclist. And then I just started to not like it as much. And I wanted a challenge. I didn't think a 50K would be enough of a challenge because I'd done road marathons and stuff. So I signed up for a 50 mile. And living in Arizona, I found it by just, I saw one of Jamil's YouTube videos, so I did the Elephant Mountain 50 mile. And since then, I kind of fell in love with trail running. I was still doing both sports at the same time, so I would find myself on my road bike, and I'm just like looking over at mountains and stuff and being like, I want to be in the mountains, not next to them, and not on the road. So I just followed what I enjoyed doing, and it ended up being like, oh, I'll ride 3 times a week, and then that got down to 2 times a week, and now I almost never touch my road bike, and it's just all trail running. And then it was like, after I did the 50 mile, it really kicked my butt. I think on my Strava, I said like that was the hardest thing I've ever done, and then so that made me want to sign up for a 100 mile. So I did Mogi Monster 100 mile, and then finished that, and then 8 months after Mogi, and I did Cocodona, and then so that was getting a little bit long for me, and then I kind of just reverted to trying to find like more difficult races because I enjoyed Cocodona, but it was a bit like, I don't know if easy's the right word, but like there's a lot of like flat sections where it's not like mentally stimulating, like the whole when you get up on the Coconino Plateau and it's just a ton of forest roads. So that was my tough part of the race. So I like being in the mountains. I like being exhausted and looking up at like a cliff that you have to scramble up. It just keeps my mind occupied. So trying to find races that have like, crazy amounts of vert or a little bit of an adventure aspect is where I'm at right now. And in that whole process, I was hired by Aravipa and now I race direct. So
yeah, I was going to ask that. So this whole process and progression just started in 2021, it looks like. So how did you just dive all in so quickly? And when did you start working for Aravipa? Because that's only like 3.5 years that you even did your first trail race. That's crazy.
Yeah. So I was volunteering for a race for Black Canyon one year, and I talked to Noah Doherty, is the director of events for Aravipa. He directs a few of the races as well. I think he needed a ride back to Phoenix from Black Canyon City, and I was volunteering, so he rode back with me, and we just got to chatting. And I have a hospitality background, and then a long time ago, I used to work at like a running store. I directed a couple of like road 5Ks, 10, 15 years ago. And so we were chatting about that, and it was one of those things like, oh, if you ever need a race director, keep me in mind. And this was pre-COVID, so, or maybe during COVID, I don't even remember. But my restaurant, that shut down, so I was self-employed for a while, and we just kept in touch, and Noah reached out to me and said, hey, there's an opening. You want to come in and chat? And I chatted with Noah and Jamil, and I've been at Aravipa for 1.5 years now. Direct 14 events over the course of the year. A few fun ones, like up in Flagstaff and Tushers. Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy. 1.5 years and you direct now like 14 events a year. So it's like a third of your weekends are directing.
Yeah. It was wild though. Like after that first 50 mile, I remember like walking up to Jamil, and like I was like super nervous, and I just wanted to be like, oh, thank you so much. I watched all your YouTube videos. Like this was a lot of fun. And I remember like seeking him out to talk to him and being like a little bit starstruck. And now like I text him and work with him every day. So it's crazy how it goes.
Yeah. So going back to the first 50 miler, I mean, you had a pretty good background in endurance with triathlon, but how did you even start with knowing how to train for it, deciding how to even attack your first 50?
I had no idea. So I was just going out. That was when I was like so focused on like speed and pace and everything. So I would do, like I had the engine to do it, but I chose a really tough one too. Elephant Mountains, it's got like 7,000 feet of vert, and there's a lot of really rough and rocky trails for it too. So I was just going on to like the easy trails behind my house in the desert, and I'd go do 20 miles at like, low 8s or something like that pace, like very, very running. And this race was a lot of hiking involved and stuff like that too. So probably didn't have enough mileage, but I was just training the wrong modality. I was still doing like speed work and just wanted to be like a really good runner. And I was just like, basically just get through the marathon and it's all downhill from there. And it thoroughly chewed me up. I was pretty beat up after the race, could barely walk. But since then I've worked with a coach, Pete Mortimer, over the last couple of years. So we've got the training more dialed, and now I just love doing. Now it's funny how much I don't run and do speed work. I do a lot of like just backcountry, just on our mountains behind our house, off trail stuff and gnarly climbs, and run here and there. But the mileage is a little bit higher, but the time is a lot higher. I was probably only training 8 hours a week running back then, and now it's 12-ish, I'd say.
Yeah. How does that compare to triathlon? Because you were pretty competitive in the triathlon world too, weren't you?
Yeah, I was probably never a good Ironman triathlete. I was always better at short stuff. So that was a lot of just like speed work. So I was only running 30 or 40 miles a week, but you're training for 5Ks and 10Ks. So it was a lot of track work and a lot of turnover stuff. And then the majority of your time is on the bike, where you're getting like your volume in. So overall, I'd be training, like if I was in an Ironman block, it'd probably be 12 to 14 hours, but those were few and far between. So a typical, for me, triathlon and work was probably in that 10-hour range, and riding 100-ish miles a week and running 30 to 40 a week, and then swim when I can.
Yeah. So what kind of did you take from that triathlon world into trail running? Is there any crossover I mean, it just seems like such a regimented thing to in triathlon, especially kind of bike to running transition, fueling, that type of thing. But trail running feels like the Wild West and like cowboy style, I guess. Is there any, like crossover, or is it just totally you get to have more fun trail running now?
I think that's the big thing, is it's way more fun. The community, I think, is a lot more welcoming and cooler, and less regimented. That's a big thing, but you can learn a lot. I guess like training for triathlon, you learn your body, right? I did it for 10, 15 years. So I know what works for me and what doesn't in terms of nutrition as well. Probably nutrition was the biggest thing, just knowing knowing how to fuel and when to fuel and like when to stop shoving stuff into your stomach and when to keep going. But yeah, not a ton of crossover between the two, which is great, because I was always like a stat nerd, and I needed my pace to be this, or it was a bad workout, or my power on my bike needs to hit these numbers, or else it was bad. And now I just like start my watch and I don't look at it until I'm done, and then I stop it, and it's great. It's kind of free.
Yeah, definitely. So now let's just dive into race directing now. What's your favorite event that you direct, and what makes you such an amazing race director, if you are?
I'm still figuring that out, I guess. No, so I do the Desert Runner Trail Series in Phoenix. That's all winter, and that's a series of 7 races. I do 2 races in Flagstaff, and then I do Tushers in Utah. And my favorite one is Tushers. It's tough to beat that. Like, you were just up there. It's a beautiful area, and it's just a great race. I think it's like it has potential to be one of those like big nationally recognized 100Ks or potentially 100-milers if we get that going. That would be really cool. But that's my favorite one. It's also really challenging. Obviously, this year there was a Silver King fire, put a damper on the race, and we didn't know if it was going to happen until 9 days out or something like that. But we just stuck with it and made it work. Other than that, I think like just having like the runner first mentality while race directing helps a ton. So it's not, I'm never thinking about budget or anything like that. I'm thinking about runners having a good time and what kind of course they would enjoy and what they want at this aid station. And even like when it comes down to swag and stuff like that, I just like what makes the race good for the runners, not our bottom line.
Yeah, I want to go back to the fire and what happens when you see that break out. Like, you have a race, it was like 2 or 3 weeks out, a fire breaks out. What do you do? Like, how do you start figuring out how to put on a race when there's a fire on the course?
Yeah, so that was a difficult one. Even before the fire, we had to do a reroute because of endangered plant species on Delano Peak. So I already had one reroute submitted and approved. So even but put yourself in the runner's shoes. They signed up for the race. I had to send out an email in like April being like, hey, we can't use Delano Peak. Here's your new courses. So they were living with that. And then I had my buddy Damon Chavez. He lives right near the range, and he kind of messaged me and he was like, hey, this was when it was like 100 acres, like right when it first started. He's like, hey, this fire broke out. So I was like keeping an eye on it. And then the next morning, I woke up to the National Forest Service, Fish Lake Forest, calling me, which is never good news. Like if they're calling you, that's a bad thing. So he was just keeping me, telling me about the fire. But then I was just on InstaWeb and Twitter like 24/7 just for any updates. And my focus was like, let the Forest Service and the people working on the fire do their thing. I'll just be like the middleman communicating to the runners. So I sent out a lot of emails. Maybe people got annoyed by that, but I was just trying to think about what I would like as a runner. So even if there was like no update, I would just send something out like, here's where we are right now. I've got a fire alternative route. I have asked the Forest Service if that would be plausible. They haven't got back to me, but it's understandable because they're all working on the fire right now. So when they get back to me, I'll let everyone know, kind of thing. So I would just kind of let the runners know exactly what I was doing. And other than that, I was following it really close, and I'd have tracked the fire a bit, oh, I'll make a route that avoids this canyon, and then I'll make a backup route that avoids this side of the range, and that's essentially what we had to do.
Yeah, how many backup routes did you have by the time you actually got one approved?
Oh gosh, I was making something new. It's about like every single day. So I had so many segments because I would just like take GPX tracks from what I've run and what other runners would have run, and just like I know from here to here it's 8 miles, and here to here, and just like it was just this giant puzzle of what we've tried to put things together. And then it looked like the fire was going to stay on the west or the east side of the range, so we'd be running on the west side. So eventually I just completely avoided that area. And there's a fire road that we usually use to put some aid stations there. I just assumed that we wouldn't get approved for that. So I made a route that didn't incorporate that fire road, didn't incorporate the east side of the range. On the downside of it is it left the runners with like a 15-mile stretch without aid. But I kind of figured they'd rather do with that than not have a race or a rescheduled race, which for Tushers, we usually it's like 500 people show up to run, and I'd say only like less than 100 are from the actual Beaver County area. So everyone's traveling in. So a reschedule might as well be a cancellation for some people. So just with flights and accommodation, stuff like that.
Okay, so you get approval for a new route, and then how do you figure out like aid stations and volunteers and everything? Because it was only like a week or something before the approval and the race going, I think.
Yeah, we were at the break, because those are the things you're thinking about too. Is I need to hear back from the National Forest today, basically, or else we can't have a race, because we're getting to that crunch time where I have a scheduled staff and get volunteers and figure out aid stations and stuff like that. So it was literally the last day. I remember walking into the office and Patty Curry asked me like what the deal with Tushers is, and I was like, I am 99% sure the race is not going to happen. And so I was like, don't plan on doing Tushers because I don't think it's going to happen. I need to hear back. Good news needs to happen like within an hour. And then I got a call from the Forest Service and he said, we're good to go. So it was like, it was great news for a bit, but then it was just like, oh my gosh, we have to do this thing now. So it was like Thursday to Tuesday. And I just worked like it was like 14-hour days in the office where I was just like trying to, you're planning on aid stations, then scheduling staff, and then you have to do site maps for every aid station and equipment lists and what kind of gear we need and going out to here. And then it's just this big logistical puzzle. But yeah, we made it work. It was great. It was great. It was really cool to see everyone come together, just staff and runners and like on our direction side, just make the race happen on such short notice.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is during that time, Aravipa had like 2 or 3 other events going, one like on the East Coast, and I don't know, it was just crazy.
That's right. There was a bunch of people too. They that was when that like cyber attack canceled a bunch of flights. So like a bunch of our staff got stuck in New Hampshire. So they were going to be working Jigger Johnson in New Hampshire, and then a lot of the staff was going to fly back to Arizona and then leave for Tushers on Wednesday morning. But instead of coming back on Sunday, they were stuck in New Hampshire till Tuesday. So they flew back on Tuesday and left for Tushers on Wednesday. But that was like, one of them was like our operations manager. So I was like excited to have a meeting with him to kind of like just bounce ideas back and forth on how we're going to do things logistically. And I like messaged him like, hey, Mike, you going to be in the office today? He's like, nope, I'm still in Boston. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is just curveball after curveball.
My gosh. Wow. Yeah. So I guess if we zoom out a little outside of a fire, what is it like at Aravipa? I mean, it's like the biggest race company in the country, and now you have like multiple states and multiple directors doing different things. How do you like share resources and put on all these massive things?
Yeah, I think it's great. Like, I think number one thing that I like about it is like I guess like the mission is in the right direction. So we're like we have our eggs in our right basket. So it's all runner first and just trying to like build the sport, which I love. So I always try to keep that focused. I have my races and there's a few other directors, but we're like all one team. So even if I'm not directing a race or I have like an off weekend, like in a couple weeks, I'm going out to New Hampshire to work a race out there, or like if it's Mogi Monster and Noah needs help out there, I'll go up to Mogi and do that. But and then it's the same thing. Like I direct a 100-miler in January that goes 30 something hours just for the race plus the setup and breakdown. So I can't work 50 hours straight. So I'll have another race director come in and work like an overnight shift. So and then it's honestly like I'm spoiled. My job is like pretty easy compared to some other race directors across the country. We have a warehouse with all our supplies and a warehouse manager and a giant staff. So and this fleet of box trucks. So if I'm going to put up a race, I just need to go I just need to put a list together and be like, I need this, and give it to the warehouse manager, and boom, a truck is loaded. And then we have people to do everything. It's a well-oiled machine by now. Every race obviously has its own different set of challenges. It's not like you're putting on like a track meet every week, but just where like remote aids are going and what they might need. And there's always, it's kind of like a fly by the seat of your pants thing too during the race. But no, it's a great place to work. I'm super happy that I'm there.
Yeah. Where do you think it's all going, especially with the live stream and stuff like that, and races having long wait lists and stuff? How do you think we're going to be able to have enough races, have enough runners, and have enough content? Because I think we kind of started trail running officially, doing races about the exact same time. And since then, it's insane. Just in like 3.5 years, we've both seen it explode. Where do you think it's all going? Is everything going to be live streamed?
Yeah, I think so. Like there's never going to be a shortage of content for sure. So I think that's probably the next thing is growing the sport, not from like a number of runners perspective, but like taking the next step up competitively and getting bigger brand name sponsors and more national exposure. I can see it going there, like races that have larger prize purses. And I don't know, you have to make it accessible, but you have to take care of the elites too. So it's kind of this, you got to kind of walk that line for races like that. But also there's a lot of runners that don't like to see their entry fee go to a prize purse for elites. So at least the one race I do have that has a prize purse, we do it from like last year was Speedland. They ponied up for the whole prize purse. So no runner entry fee was going for the prize purse. But so that's the weird line right there. But I think that's the direction it's going, is going to be more competitive and more eyes on the sport. Yeah. Cause a lot of these races are already at capacity, and there's not a ton, like with permitting and stuff. It's not like filling up a stadium, or it's not like we have unlimited resources. Like it's trail running, you're going on national forest and stuff sometimes. So when they say it's a hard cap, they mean it. I've asked to get more runners at Tushers like every month, and I get shot down by the national forest all the time. And I get it. I totally get it. Like we need to be stewards of the areas that we're running and stuff too. But yeah,
it's amazing how full even races that aren't even national are getting. But I guess the last question I want to ask is, somehow, I don't know how you've done it. You've done an amazing job of getting into trail running and then getting into it where you get to combine your passion and career. So what advice would you give someone that finds that they are into, let's just say, general outdoor industry? What have been like the key things that got you in the door of getting to work in the industry you love as well?
Yeah, I think just gotta stick with it and just I don't know, bet on yourself. That's the biggest thing. I think honestly, like the whole COVID pandemic deal was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because it got me out of hospitality and out of restaurants. So I was managing those, and you think you're happy with that, and I get out of that, and I don't have to work nights anymore. So I was self-employed for a few years, and I refused to take another hospitality job because it wasn't going to make me happy. So I just waited for something that would make me happy, and I knew I wanted to be doing something in the outdoor spectrum or exercise fitness corridor or something like that. So I was patient, and I still busted my butt and just tried to be around it. So I was still volunteering for Aravipa events and running the events and just getting my name out there. And I never really pushed. I just kind of waited, and I guess I got lucky too. And Noah reached out one day and said he had an opening and asked if we could come in and talk. And now I'm here.
Yeah, I think that part's so important, is whether people are looking to be sponsored or get a job in the industry, is like volunteering, rubbing elbows, saying yes to giving someone a ride back to town. You never know who that's going to be. I think all those little things equal that luck that you say you got lucky. It's like, well, yeah, you also had to front load all this work that's not going to be for any pay, especially like Black Canyon. And I think that's such an underrated thing these days, is sometimes you have to front load a lot of putting your name out there, volunteering, staying up all night, going and being nervous talking to someone. And then sometimes it just comes back and pays off and you're directing 14 races before you know it.
Yeah. So, but to jump off that too, I thought that was really cool. Like at Tusher's, how you stayed overnight till the last runner was there. I thought that was really cool. And I think more people should do that.
Thanks.
Or even like, yeah, if you're like, just from my race director perspective, if you're like an influencer or an elite, I think like volunteering or like at an aid station or just having presence out on the course is huge. And not even like, I mean, I'll get my volunteers, however, so I'm not just pandering to get people to volunteer, but seeing elites or fast people in general at an aid station is such a huge bonus to runners. We've had some races up in Flagstaff where they've got a lot of studs up there, you know, and you see like a Pete Mortimer or a Jeff Browning serving you food at an aid station. Like that's such a huge bonus to your everyday runner, and kind of a cool surprise where they're, you know, mile 40 into a 50 mile and they roll up to an aid station and they've got one of their heroes giving them a sandwich or a refill in their flask. So I think I would push more people to get out there, especially if you're on the pointier end of races or have a following. I think that's really good at building the sport as well.
Yeah, and even to one up you at mile 208, so Fort Tuthill or whatever that mile was, in 2021, Jim Walmsley was volunteering and just taking trash, filling up flasks for runners when I was coming through. And it just, like, if Jim frickin' Walmsley is volunteering, I think we can all find some time to volunteer. So that's pretty awesome.
We just had Courtney DeWalter out doing breakdown at one of our night races for Aravipa, like a really one of our smaller races, but she was doing the breakdown, like not even in front of anyone, just showed up and was tearing down tents and stuff, but the staff loved it.
Yeah, I think we can kind of end on the whole sentiment of like the cool thing about trail running and why I've continued to be more immersed in it is everyone shares the same start line and has to run the same route. And whether it's fast or slow or hard or easy, it's just pretty crazy that there's a sport like that, because you don't get to go play on the same basketball court as LeBron. Like it's pretty insane, this sport we have. Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. This was awesome.
Yeah, it was great, man.
All right, thank you for tuning in. As always, 5-star reviews, share it with your friends, let them in on all this knowledge we're dropping, all the fun we're having over here at Free Outside Enterprises. Sign up for Montana Meltdown, our fixed time race with 4-hour, 12-hour, and 24-hour options here in Bozeman, Montana on October 12th. Link down below in the show notes. And I don't know, when you're listening to this, I will be in the Ruby Mountains doing the Ruby Crest Trail out and back with my friend who I've also done the John Muir Trail with in, I think it was like April and July. In lots of snow, we always just have some adventures. So I will be releasing a listener wrote in a question, or a challenge, should I say. It was like, can you do 25 minutes on this for your podcast? And that episode's coming Monday, because the answer is yes. Not only could I do 25 minutes, I did 28 minutes on this mystery topic coming soon. All right. Thank you all, as always. And with that, stay elite, my friends.